In today's video, I want to take a closer look at the 4 PlayStation 4 exclusives that have been confirmed for Sony's E3 2018 press conference. In a break from their traditional norm where they focus on a lot of surprises and you really don't know what to expect going into E3, Sony has stated that this year they are primarily focusing on 4 titles, all of them being PlayStation 4 exclusives, but all of them being games that have already been announced. Some of them we know more than others. Now, these aren't the only games that are going to be present at the conference. I'm sure they have other announcements. They said that third-party and indie developers will be a part of it, but for other game announcements as far as exclusives go, we might not be seeing any more of those. A lot of you guys have speculated we're not seeing any brand new exclusive announcements because various studios like Guerrilla Games might be working on a title for the PlayStation 5, and Sony is nowhere near ready to make an official announcement about that console, so let's focus on the games that are coming at E3 of this year. Again, we've got 4 exclusives to go over, so let's get right into this. The first one is a game that's release isn't all too far out, and that is Insomniac's Spider-Man. Yes, we got a huge info drop about Spider-Man last month thanks to Game Informer, but Sony has confirmed that Spider-Man will have another big impact at E3 of this year. Now, that's a little bit surprising to me because we've already gotten a release date announcement. We know it's coming on September 7th, and we've already seen quite a bit of gameplay from Spider-Man, and at the point that E3 rolls around, this game is going to be close to a finished product because keep in mind, a game pretty much is finished and ready to go 6 weeks out. That's when you hear a game going gold. So when you think about it, the Sony conference is on, I believe, June 11th. Spider-Man will probably be a finished product by the end of July, early August at the latest. But still, this is a game that so many of us are excited for, and what could be very interesting is that we've been hearing rumblings about a potential Spider-Man PlayStation 4 Pro console. I think that's an absolute license to print money for the holiday season. If families go into retailers and they see a PlayStation 4 decked out with the Spider-Man design, man, that is going to sell so well. And I would like it to be a Pro console, even though the base model might be a little bit more accessible. But hey, maybe we can see bundles for both. I do foresee an announcement of that at E3, and I'm sure we're gonna get a lot more gameplay going over a lot more of the characters. Another title that's going to be focused on at E3, and one that I'm personally very excited for, is Ghost of Tsushima by Sucker Punch. Now, this is a brand new IP, so you might be asking me, why am I so excited for it? This is an unproven game franchise, but you have to look at the studio that's involved. Sucker Punch is one of the most talented first-party studios that Sony has in their arsenal. They've worked on games such as Sly Cooper, as well as the most recent Infamous lineup of games, and while Infamous Second Son was a little bit disappointing to some people, now Sucker Punch has really worked on the PlayStation 4. Ghost of Tsushima has been in development for a while, and the trailer we saw at Paris Games Week looked fantastic, but expect some actual gameplay at E3. Now, if you don't know what Ghost of Tsushima is, let me go through the game description. The year is 1274. Samurai warriors are the legendary defenders of Japan until the fearsome Mongol Empire invades the island of Tsushima, wreaking havoc and conquering the local population. As one of the last surviving samurai, you rise from the ashes to fight back. But honorable tactics won't lead you to victory. You must move beyond your samurai traditions to forge a new way of fighting, the way of the ghost, as you wage an unconventional war for the freedom of Japan. Now, it is listed as an open-world adventure game, so this is going to be yet another open-world title coming off of Infamous, and based on the game's description, it does sound like there will be some moral influence in the game, like in Infamous, where you have to make good and evil decisions. It looks like Ghost of Tsushima might feature something similar. We should see an in-depth look at E3, however, don't expect this game to be released in 2018. This is definitely a 2019 title. Nonetheless, we don't see a lot of great samurai games these days. Onimusha, I don't know if that series is ever coming back, so Sucker Punch creating Ghost of Tsushima. This has potential to turn into a fantastic franchise, and it's so different than anything else that Sony is putting out, and I feel like that's where Sony is really excelling. All the games that they're putting out are so different than one another. Ghost of Tsushima is different than Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn is different than Spider-Man. Spider-Man is different than God of War. The lineup is just so diverse, and Ghost of Tsushima is going to be adding to that. Next up, of course, this is probably a lot of your guys' most anticipated PlayStation 4 game, and that is The Last of Us Part 2. If you've yet to play 2013's The Last of Us, you should smack yourself and go play that game as soon as possible. The Last of Us Remastered is available on the PlayStation 4. It was a wonderful game that had somewhat of a cliffhanger ending, but now we have The Last of Us Part 2. We've already seen quite a bit of the game, but so much of it is still shrouded in mystery. We don't know what his impact in the second title will be. There's been so many theories tossed around, but this is a game we should see an in-depth look at E3. I'm thinking maybe a 15-minute gameplay demo, because if you go back to E3 of 2012, that's where The Last of Us had its big gameplay dump where we saw a lot of the game, and then it was released the following year in June. I assume that The Last of Us Part 2, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to see a gigantic amount of information drop at E3 a lengthy gameplay demo, and then it's going to be prepped for a release sometime mid next year. The Last of Us is a game I shouldn't really have to sell you on. Part 2 should be just as good as Part 1, and seeing what Naughty Dog has put out recently, Uncharted 4 was incredible. And The Last of Us Part 2, much like the first Last of Us game, this could be the swan song to the PlayStation 4 and really cap off the generation in a fabulous way. And finally, while I mentioned that The Last of Us Part 2 is a lot of your guys' most anticipated PlayStation 4 title, Death Stranding has to be right up there, the latest game from Kojima Productions. You've got Norman Reedus as the main character, Mads Mikkelsen as the main antagonist, but so far what we've seen of the game has set a very interesting ambiance and tone, something that we would expect from Hideo Kojima. I think at E3 of this year, we finally are due for some gameplay, and maybe we'll even get a release window. I know that Kojima is someone that really likes to take his time with his games, but this is still listed as a PlayStation 4 title. Let's hope that it hits within the window of the PlayStation 4, and let's see some legitimate gameplay. Maybe we'll get some insight on the multiplayer component of the game. And at this point, we've seen all of the other trailers, we've read the fan theories. Let's get something really substantial with Death Stranding and get us excited from a gameplay standpoint, because we know that the storytelling is going to be absolutely engrossing in the game, but we also want the game to be top tier from a gameplay standpoint, and I expect nothing less from Kojima, but I just want to finally see Death Stranding in action. So those are the 4 games that Sony looks to be primarily focusing on at E3. What do you think? Which of these 4 titles are you the most excited for? Are you disappointed at these offerings? I know there are games like Days Gone, which, to be fair, we just had a gigantic gameplay reveal thanks to Game Informer again. There's titles like Dreams, which Sony hasn't stated would be at the show, but maybe it will be a part of the show. They've just said that these are the 4 titles they are primarily focusing on, and really, can you blame them? These are probably the top 4 most anticipated PlayStation 4 exclusives, and especially when you're talking about games published directly by Sony. I know you've got games like the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but that is more of a Square Enix project, and maybe we'll see that at their press conference. That's gonna conclude this video. Again, sound off with your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.